I'm going to explain to you real quick. We're rolling yet. There's a reason for it. You were a single mom?
I still am.
And do you support HUD housing or did you live in HUD housing?
Both. I lived in HUD housing with my sons when they were little. We paid $35 a month for a great house, and I'm so grateful for.
Was it an apartment or a house?
It was a house. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep, 235 6th Street.
Wow. How many kids you have?
2 boys.
So my mom raised me till I was 13 years old. We lived in the HUD housing, supported housing. It was apartment 1295 North Gilbert, apartment 85 in Fullerton, California. So I'm a big affordable housing guy. I really believe
it mattered. It saved
and I'm
us.
trying to do that here in Las Vegas. I have this Ault affordable housing, this real estate project, and we're raising about $250 million to buy multifamily houses where the apartments, now there won't be a lot of Section 8, but they'll be affordable in the sense that's like $900 to $1,500 range.
Which seems crazy that that's what affordable is, but now I sound like my mom. Like, oh, back in the day, I paid $35.
Where were you originally from?
Chicago, just outside of Chicago, but...
I'm going to blow your mind right now. I waited to this so you tell me where you were from.
Hammond, Indiana.
Okay. Where do you think my mom... Okay, tell me the hospital that you were born in.
St. Margaret's Hospital.
Right. Who was your doctor?
I'd have to go look.
It was a male, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. It was a male. They all had males.
Yeah. Do you know who gave birth to you? The same person that gave birth to my wife.
Shut up.
Do you know where my wife was born?
In that hospital?
In Hammond, Indiana.
Shut up.
I was just there.
What? That's
It's a true story.
mind-blowing. I never meet anyone from
You're gonna be
Hammond,
blown
Indiana.
away. Yeah.
My
wife.
a year apart, 2 years apart?
What's your birthday?
I'm in July.
Hers is July 24th.
I'm the 30th.
Okay. So
I
you'll
love
be
your wife.
you'll be 53.
That's correct.
You're exactly 1 year apart. Born by the
That's
same doctor in Hammond, Indiana.
How mind-blowing
I know.
is that?
And so my wife's family
That's
moved
so
from
crazy.
My wife's family moved from Hammond, Indiana to move to Sonoma, California. Her grandfather was president of what was then the American Aramco, Saudi Arabia's oil company back then. Back when Saudi Arabia was different than the king had just kind of taken over, and he was the American president for Aramco, and so he traveled back and forth from Saudi Arabia, and he bought vineyard land in Sonoma in the 50s.
What was he doing in Hammond?
They grew up in Hammond. I don't know.
Those were some rough years. Those weren't like Hammond's
I was actually
lovely.
just at the house there. I passed the hospital. I went to the house. I visited. I took pictures.
So jealous.
Yeah, I was there
But
for
we weren't in a neighborhood. We were like in the hard side of Hammond.
Well, there's tough parts there.
That's
yeah,
where we
for
were.
Sure.
We were in the tough parts.
But I saw the White Castle.
Did you
I enjoyed
eat at
that.
it? Did
I
you
did.
let the
I had
bread
no choice. Right.
hit your lips?
I hit my lips right away. I thought you'd be blown away about my wife being born in Hammond,
That's
Indiana.
so crazy.
Yeah.
That is insane.
I know, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I love that. And a year later.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? It's kind of mind blowing.
Well,
and
I
so,
think it's interesting her dad was like doing the Saudi Arabia thing.
No, that wasn't her dad. That was her grandfather. But her dad was a mechanic. Both her parents,
Connor?
both her parents were deaf.
Is that right?
Yeah. Hi. Hey, you're on air with us. Stormy is right next to me. So, Christy, what city were you born in?
Hammond, Indiana.
Is that insane?
Were you at St. Margaret's Hospital?
Yes.
Well, do you know who your doctor was?
No, I said I'd have to.
It's a
look,
man,
but you
Christy.
guys do.
It's a
I know
man.
it's
It's
a
the
guy.
same guy.
Yes.
I'm sure it's the same guy.
It's the
Yeah.
same guy. Because Christy, we have another friend who's born in the same hospital by the same doctor, but you guys are like what 6 or 8 years apart, correct?
10 years apart.
Right.
He's class of 70. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm going to date myself.
And then
yes, he's 10
We
years
already
older.
dated ourselves.
And then your brother, your sister was born there too, right?
Yeah, our whole family was born. My mom.
Mine too.
And
My mom
all 4
too.
kids were born
Everybody.
there.
I wonder if our parents knew
Isn't
each
that
other.
crazy?
But my parents were poor.
Well, were your parents poor or not, Christy?
Poor?
Yeah, economically.
Yes, we were more poor in California, but yes, we were not well off. Yes.
All right.
Maybe
hey,
they
you're
did
gonna
know
see
each other.
Stormy tonight for dinner.
Great.
That's the best.
All right, I'll talk to you tonight then.
Bye, honey.
Bye.
Bye.
I love that.
I thought that was mind-blowing.
That's the best.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it really is. It's so cool.
Hey, the interview's over. Let's end on a high note. So the reason I brought up the living situation for you was, I grew up I didn't know how poor I was. That's so strange feeling. My mom worked really hard, but then told me we could be evicted because we didn't have money. But I didn't ever feel poor. It's a strange thing. Until I probably felt poor around 5th grade or maybe 4th grade when I went to Robert Ortmeyer's house and his Kool-Aid tasted differently. I've told this story to other people so other people would know it. But his Kool-Aid tasted differently because my Kool-Aid was just a color. I drank it, it tasted like water. His Kool-Aid was really sweet. I'm like, I told him how much I hated Kool-Aid. He's like, why would you hate Kool-Aid? And then he had Oreo cookies, which I had never had before in my life.
What was the difference in the Kool-Aid?
He had sugar in it. I didn't.
Oh,
my mom just put the packets in the water. There was no sugar. That's when I knew I was poor.
Really? Is that what you thought?
Yeah,
We're poor?
I didn't. Yeah, I was and the kind of clothes I wore and stuff like that. But it didn't really matter to me. But nowadays, I realize that I went the other way, whereas like my kids have never grown up poor, and never was tough for them. I'm wondering, do you think your kids are going to be different than what it was like with you?
No, they grew up poor.
They grew up poor, but does that mean that you think that they'll be poor? Not in the sense of poor, like economically, I mean, but like you think it changed the way, it changed for me, I know the way I set things up for my kids.
Yeah, I think I felt poorer than I was raised at one time. Like when I was on welfare and you're paying $35 for rent and you're using your food stamps to eat. But my mom and dad were really, proud people, and they said, we've paid our whole life into this system. This is what it was for. Like, we would feel great if you could go use some of that and what we've paid for. So you use it as a stepping stone. It's not a lifestyle, and you do what you can to support yourself at whatever means it is. They were pretty simple, blue collar. Anything was good enough really for them as long as we could take care of ourselves. And for my boys, I think as a single mom, like I did a lot for them because it was easier than like trying to get everybody on the same page and do homework and get everything done. So I think, there's something they grow up with. I think they had less discipline because I was more focused on a career because I saw that as my way out, like hard work, just hustle. You got to feed the kids, you got to get through it. And
so take us from the timeline, because you were living in HUD housing, but you went to work with Patrick. So something had to change there because you clearly, obviously, became massively successful at what you were doing.
Yeah,
and that usually comes with some economic benefit.
Yeah, those were a few years between. So when I was divorced early on, I was a young mom and divorced at 21 with 2 boys.
How young of a mom were you?
17, just about 18.
My mom had me, she was 18.
Is that right?
She had to be pregnant at 17, had me at 18. I never knew my father.
Well, baby daddy's still around for me.
Is he still around?
Yeah.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
That's great.
No, it is.
That part's great.
He just got back around. Like, he and I didn't talk for 30 years, and now we find ourselves in the same place. And so
you're friends now?
Yes. Well, I think we've always been friends.
Was he not in the kids' life?
He was, but once your kids get to a certain age, like you don't check in with the person watching them. You're just kind of like, oh.
What was the timeline then from you raising 2 boys to going to work at, or do you want to talk about it in a different order, or going to work for Overstock?
So I started Overstock in 2001, and my boys were 15 and 11.
2001. So that's really
12.
That's really early days of the internet.
Yeah, early.
You're really early.
Yes.
When Overstock was a novelty.
Absolutely.
It was a big novelty.
Yeah, it was. You weren't sure. That year we did 18 million. So that was 2001. And 18 million, I think, when I look back at 2001 and, where we were online and shopping and how it was so hard to get people to believe, 18 million was pretty good.
So you started in 2001.
Yes.
What were you doing?
So most of us started as temps at the time because who knew if the e-commerce thing was going to work. And I started in a department called B2B, and it had a separate website. It was Overstock, letter B, number 2, letter B.com. Super hard to explain over the phone. And we would cold call companies. I had just actually moved back from Vegas right after September 11th, moved back, walked into this job. You'd cold call like a jewelry store.
Where were you?
When?
What city was this in?
Oh, Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
moved back home.
Got it. Okay.
You call like a jewelry store, some random person cold calling them and say, hey, we've got a way for you to buy diamonds. It's going to be so much cheaper to get your inventory in. There's no overhead. And they'd say, send a catalog. And you'd say, well, you just got to sign up online. Just go online and look. And they'd say, we don't even have a computer. Don't have a computer. This is like 20 years ago. And it was so hard to do. But what happened for me was we had this huge thing of luggage in the warehouse, which is a lot of space when you're charging per square inch, you know. And we'd done this big buy of luggage. And every day, these like Glengarry, Glen Ross dudes, literally, that was doing the cold calling, you know, they'd walk around and be like, wait, I got some luggage for you, you know. Because anybody who sold the luggage had this, you know, there was this big commission. It was going to be the best thing ever. So these guys were just hammering the phone selling these luggage. Well, we had gotten things like Franck Mueller
Luggage.
watches, but there was like $1 million deal. So you were going to get a big commission. Well, I was just chewing through like, oh, we got some blenders, we got some.
But who are you
things that were
calling?
easy. Random people. Like there would be lists. There was back in the day, there were lists. Like you had to buy these catalogs of businesses and who they were and what their names were and what they did. And it was literally like a phone book. We were just going through it. I sell the luggage as the female, right? 2001, and I'm no victim, so don't get me wrong there. I just happen to be female. I sell the luggage. The manager comes in, and I'm like, hey, I sold the luggage. I got a PO for the, you know, $1.2 million in luggage. And the thing is I wasn't trying to sell the luggage. I was just building relationships, letting people know what's going on
Sure.
in the, you know, internet world. He tells me that him and this other guy, Ivan, are going to take the PO and they'll take it from here. And I say, what do you mean? What does that mean? And he
Oh, I'm getting pissed already.
Oh,
This happened
yeah.
20 years ago, and I'm ready to get pissed.
And I go, why would you do that? And he's like, well, you know, we would just take it from here. Now, Ivan was a younger guy. Probably I'm older than him. But anyway, those two were going to take it. And I'm struggling to understand what's happening. But he said, there's something. This is what he says. I lie to you not on my grave. There's something called the glass ceiling. Have you heard of it? And I thought, oh, hell no. This guy cannot
No way.
be
No
for
way,
real.
really?
Yes. And I'm like, but I have to say, maybe I haven't heard of it. Right in my mind, I'm thinking this would be comical if this guy, like, what the fuck? So I say, no, I haven't. And he's like, oh, the glass ceiling. It's where, like, women, you know, like, you look up and you see through the glass and all the men are up there, but you know you can't get there. This is that moment where, you know, you just can't take this over the line. And I was like, oh, is that so? Yeah, glass ceiling. That makes sense. Okay, I got
boy.
you. That's great. Yeah. And so I just thought the whole time, Ivan is like, yep, yeah, that's right. That's fine. It was a Friday. I took the PO and he said Ivan's going to call. His name was Gary from Colorado. Gary, if you're ever hear this, I would love to get in touch with Gary because he went through this ride with me. I don't even know where the guy is. Next day is Saturday, and I think I'm going to go into the office, just kind of get my shit together. And Patrick comes in. Patrick Byrne, CEO, founder of Overstock, no longer CEO. Patrick happens to come in, and I'm like, dang, I don't really know. I did know this guy. Like, we hit it off early. I was selling things like crazy, so I had, you know, the attention. I
We're
always
selling well.
yeah, and I always have ideas and make things better.
Sure.
Or I try to.
Right.
So I go in and I go, I have to walk through this with you. Now, keep in mind, this is the same guy who on my second week of work, we went on the Christmas party and we were on these tubes going down, you know, slopes
slopes.
in Park City. And this guy was like, Stormy, I like it when I lay beneath your tube and I can look up.
Patrick?
No, this boss
Other
guy
dude.
that
Oh.
told me about the glass ceiling. His name's John.
God, he'd be fried now.
Yeah, so he had just like said all these disgusting things to me at the Christmas party. And so I was a little weary of him. Then he hits me with the glass ceiling and it's like, dude, it's crazy and it's funny. Like if you go through it as a woman and you've learned how to kind of, you know, these are the old days, far pre, hashtag Me Too. But when you learn how to get through it, you kind of just, juke a little, shrug it off a little, but that the wrong answer is not to stop and go, do you know what he said to me at that Christmas party?
Right.
You want to know what he said to me? Didn't matter what he said to me, because that wasn't, my goal wasn't that. My goal was, what the hell's e-tail and shopping? Like, I didn't know what was going on still.
Right.
People are really going to buy this online.
Right.
So I had a different agenda. And I think women, especially my age, that have actually had to navigate through it, we have an understanding of,
So what happened with Patrick?
So I go in and I tell him, I'm like, look, because I think it sounds unreal. I'm thinking, this sounds like the dog ate my homework. No matter what I say, it's going to sound like a lie. There's no way you can get through this. And by the way, I did go home and call my brother to verify, that I still did know what the glass ceiling meant. You know what I mean? Do I know?
Your brother probably went crazy.
Everybody. And so Patrick's like, as anyone would be, that's incredible, right? It's incredible. And I'm like, well, yeah, but who would ever make something like that up? And he's just like, oh, it's really hard to believe. It's very hard to believe. I said, get it. Yeah, I get it. I want you to call Ivan. I want you to go through, do your due diligence, whatever you got to do, because it's the truth. Oh, and P.S., call the guy I sold the luggage to, because Ivan called him and gave it to him for cheaper. Like $100,000 cheaper for some reason. I think it was because Gary wasn't going to pay full price if they brought the dudes in. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Patrick did the research. Of course, he found out that this guy had actually said that. After that, we had to go through counseling, the sales manager and myself. And
You and Ivan?
The other guy, John. Ivan wasn't at fault. English was a second language with Ivan. So he didn't know what the glass ceiling was legitimately at the time. So he was just agreeing with his boss, as people do.
No. But, okay, so Ivan was the sales guy. Mm-hmm. The guy who was your manager was John?
Yes.
What happened to John?
John, I've never talked about this, but I just think, why not? John wound up, we had to go into a conference room, and here I was thinking my boss, and, you just didn't take on the male stuff when you're going through your career as a female. You did not go through this. So I'm walking in this room and I'm really nervous because I understand e-commerce now, and now I'm like cooking with ideas, and I'm thinking I need to see this through. And we go into this conference room, and John, who had been such a big man, on the slope, and such a big man in the office when he was like bullying me, now that he's caught and he's with the CEO, and then I think the operations manager was there.
Ouch.
John was all tucked in his little shoulders, and he was literally crying and sniveling. And I just went, get your shit together, John.
Wow.
Snap out of it. So we had that, and John had to move away and work remotely for a little bit.
I bet he did.
No, he did.
Mm-hmm. And who got credit for the sale?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
But 100,000 less.
Yeah, we sold it for less.
So that was back when the internet was really like a splash page,
Yes.
kind of, and you were selling things online, but you're still doing it by phone.
Well, that was the B2B side. Overstock.com, direct to consumer, existed too.
Did it?
So I took the B2B and I ran that, built it up to about 20 million.
Wow.
And that was 2002 was.
You were selling to other wholesalers.
Yeah.
Got it.
2002 was glass ceiling, the very beginning of 2002, like March. And then by 2000, I wound up with the department, and it was because I had gone through the training and then redid what I think we should do and found just efficient ways to work. And I grew it to 20 million by 2003. And then I said, we should just shut it down because it belongs it's one domain. Let's just make a bulk section instead of having these two experiences. By then you just understood you're just going to this domain. So you didn't need two places to be.
But I always wondered how I saw Amazon did the same thing, how they got away with, you'd be selling the same, I don't know how you guys, to me, never figured it out. I never figured out e-commerce, how people got that big.
Well,
I know they're huge now, and it's just a way of life, but the same site has two different places that you can buy from, and sometimes the same item on the same site is a different price.
There's all kinds of magic going on behind the scenes.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So you are running B2B, and so how did you? I mean, you moved up the ladder over a period of years, right?
Yes. I'm a really good multitasker, and I tend to handle pressure. So I was able to do many things by assessing. I had been assistant to the president a few times, so learned just enough about business. We try to go to college, but I always found being on the job more exciting. And I knew that, I worked with the president who had 5 branches, and he taught me so much about business that when I'm walking into this startup and it's not set up correctly, and I'm thinking, oh, we should do this and we should do that. So I just went to Patrick and said, if you just give me like 6 weeks to manage your life, your schedule, your stuff, I will get you so efficient, and you'll be able to maintain an open door policy, but also have like some structure.
So you actually worked under Patrick then directly?
The whole time. He was who I reported to the entire time. I didn't report to anyone else.
Really? Mm-hmm. And how long did you directly work with Patrick?
From 2001 to 2015 or 16 when I left.
Wow.
There was something about the timing and the magic of it all, because I took the last seat in the first building. And so there was we only had like 60 chairs. And so I had the last seat, and it happened to be outside his door and the boardroom. So
he was that approachable back then? Easy to get to?
I was right there, and I was doing well. I mean, I was making the company money, and I was a happy person, I guess. And,
We could probably spend a year on the idea of what Overstock did.
Oh, we could spend 10 years.
Oh, my God. Like, I was thinking about, like, when he decided to name it the O Stadium.
I can go through that with you. That was part of my deal.
Was it?
Yeah.
When it was it .o?
O.co.
O.co?
Yeah.
Did that work out, or did they still have O.co?
So early in the day, did you see the Discover the Secret of the Big O campaign? It was 2000. This is how I got to become a VP. I had this idea. I started looking at the traffic. The internet was so fascinating. And it wasn't the internet. It was particularly selling things, right? This is before Facebook, all the things that we have now, where you actually have to work to get people to come to you.
Hey, you're in 2001. Facebook's founded in 2004.
Comes out strong about 2010. I mean,
Yeah,
it was a
took a
minute.
while.
Twitter came out. It was 2009.
Right.
It was about 2009, Facebook and Twitter. Even Google. Google wasn't there in the beginning. We were working with MSN. So I did Discover the Secret of the Big O, the campaign. I started looking at the internet and traffic, and I would just start looking at things every day. And all
I remember that. Discover the Secret of the Big O. You're double entendre. Yeah, I got you.
So all these numbers, and I'd put them out, had all these graphs, and I started seeing these patterns of traffic, and figured out a way to measure online, like if you did an offline brand, a branding campaign versus being, where we were with the affiliate programs and all the stuff. So I figured out how to measure it, and then pitched Discover the Secret of the Big O through a really long story of how I got that approved. Did it, ran the campaign for pennies. It took us from about 200 million to about 600 million.
Wow.
And that was and it was all based on that formula that I'd come up with of how we could measure the spend. Because everybody was like, if you spend $1, you can track your dollar online. But there was something really important at the time. Everybody had stopped advertising online, 2003, or on TV. The .coms had stopped. So we came out with the sleek commercial, Discover the Secret of the Big O, and it worked. And that's where I got to be a VP at the time. Part of my campaign, or the branding campaign, was, and ultimately become O.com. Because we need to brand the O. We've got 9 strokes versus 0, 1 stroke. And at the time, Q, W, and X, Q, Y, and X were all single letter domains that had been sold. I think X is Nissan or PayPal. Anyway, can't remember now. Yahoo and then someone else.
X.com was PayPal.
Yeah. So you can't buy those domains. So in 2003, I reach out to ICANN, the Internet something
Yeah.
Association name and numbers, and I start saying like, I want to get O.com. They've been fighting for that since 2003. We've done everything. If you go on the site, it'll say O.com in places, trademarked. We put it on marketing materials since then. Could not get it. So I say, at the time, Twitter was using T.co on their shortcuts. So I was like, we should just O.co, make it a shortcut, make a shortcut to O.co. Then at the same time, Oakland Stadium calls.
Yeah.
And I was known, you could always call to get a good deal, like a magic deals. So they called, and we started talking about the naming rights, which is an amazing
Yeah, but what'd you
story.
pay for it?
I can't disclose.
No? Naming rights are so expensive now.
Isn't it amazing that we got Overstock up there with Gillette?
Yeah.
I mean, FedEx Stadium. It was one of my greatest moves. So we get, and did the A's want to be Overstock Stadium? No. So we did the O.co, and then inside we would brand Overstock. But the idea was that we were really going towards, ICANN was saying, you're going to be O.com soon. And the shortcut turned out it did work on traffic. I wasn't as afraid of it as everyone else because I just kept thinking, you could see the shift of traffic going to Google. Like there was a time where everybody had type overstock.com in the URL. Well, that time had kind of passed.
See, I'm more fascinated that you were selling product. I'm a salesman. That's the kind of thing I like.
Yeah, that was tricky. I can tell you a really funny story about that.
Well, I'm curious. I want to hear it, but I'm curious about that you had a list of inventory, and did you eventually found retailers that you could sell product to that trusted you? Is that what was going on? They trusted for you to sell to them? Or were you constantly finding new people to buy?
Constantly,
That
you'd
part
find those
sucks.
jobbers.
Yeah.
People, we'd buy 10,000 vacuums and be able to put 5,000 on the site for consumer sales, and then we'd need to flip 5,000.
How are you getting 10,000 vacuums? And that people, why do they need to sell it to
They
you?
fell off the back of the truck, literally. Because they were true overstock at the time, where you figure all those 10,000 vacuums belonged in a retail store. And if the retail stores aren't selling them or it didn't push through, they would just wind up in a warehouse.
But why?
So the timing of it was just right, because you can never know exactly how many T-shirts you're going to sell. You're always going to be over inventory or under inventory. Because the minute you sell out, you'll wonder if you should have had 5 more. You know what I mean?
So the concept is if I were going to sell this can, and there were going to be, I ordered 5,000 of them, and I sold them all out, then I'm over. Then I'm screwed, right? I'm out of product.
Wouldn't you wonder if you should have ordered 6?
Right, and then so 10,000 vacuums go to you at a discount because no one else wants them because they're not selling.
Yeah, and because people don't have the money to go in and say, I'll take your 10,000 vacuums, here's a check. You even get a better deal, and I'll bring them into a warehouse and sort them out ourselves. I mean, it was revolutionary at the time that we were doing it.
And that part is fascinating. To me, I'm the most fascinated by the fact that you had a list of products in a piece of paper and said, go sell this.
And grew it to 20 million. That's the part I can't believe.
Wow.
So I went from 2003, ultimate multitasker, worked with Patrick, never really left chief of staff for many years until I hit probably 2007 or 8, where I was the responsibility of the company became larger than him. It wasn't like that, but that makes sense.
Right.
We went through suing Wall Street in 2005.
Yeah, I remember
There's
that,
stories
yeah.
all through that.
The shorts and all that.
Yeah, took over customer. I learned more about Wall Street at a weird angle too,
Yeah.
like an odd way to learn about it.
DTC and all that stuff.
God.
Still a farce to this day.
All of it.
Still a mess.
So
still
everything's
still have to put up
captured.
collateral for stupid reasons.
The whole thing's
Yeah.
really screwed up.
Yeah,
really,
stupid.
really,
GameStop
really
still
is.
doing it. Yep.
Yeah.
Everything you guys talked about back then still happening.
It's still happening.
Naked shorting. All
yeah,
kinds
and
of
it's
stupid shit.
we put a light right on it. I mean, there's no denying what we learned, the people that backed it up, the research that was done, and what was proved. And somehow it's like the Epstein thing. They just smush it under the covers. Although we did sue 13 firms and only 2 were around by the time the lawsuit hit. So I
Probably.
think there was
Yeah.
something there
Something to do with that,
yeah,
right?
it was a little bit hand in hand. We just never got credit.
So when did it go public?
2002.
So you were there before the IPO.
Yeah, just a few months.
A few months. Was the IPO a big deal back then for you guys?
Kinda, yeah, it was. But it was a Dutch auction.
What kind of money do you raise? Do you remember?
I can't remember. Let me guess. It would be like, I don't remember.
I know Amazon only raised like
135. I mean,
Amazon only raised like 56 million. It was like
Yeah, it
their
wasn't
IPO
much.
wasn't that big.
we weren't in debt most of our, while
You
we
weren't in
ran.
debt, or you were?
We weren't really.
So
No,
you become president or CEO?
president.
When do you become president of Overstock?
I went at 2005, took over customer service, built a really badass award-winning department that was super efficient and shaved a lot out of each operational piece that I touched. Just happened to
Wow.
get efficient. And did customer service in 2006. We won all kinds of awards in 2007. I took over marketing, and we was there from 2007 to 2011. And that was, we had our first 12 trailing months of $1 billion.
Wow.
So during that time, and then during my time in marketing, we entered profitability. So that was a really good, those were some good 4 years. In 2011, I took over operations, and we redid the technology for all of our partner-facing systems or manufacturer-facing systems, opened up an additional 500,000 square feet of warehouse space and
Wow.
remote warehouses
So you become the president.
in 2013. So I take over all of those operations, the supply chain, technology, new projects, a lot.
You're no longer living in HUD housing, right?
No,
Come on.
I got out
Did
of
Patrick pay you or no?
Patrick did a good job paying people. I think that he was probably the most protective because he was the sole owner, the majority owner of the stock with his employees. Which, I don't have any complaints. I'm super happy. But relatively speaking, he did do that. But I don't have any complaints.
Good.
But yeah, he paid us.
But you're getting paid now.
Yeah, now I'm
You're
getting
the president,
money.
you're getting
I'm
paid.
paid.
Right.
And it was just like these great moments at bat, and I kept getting hits.
But you're 40 years old at that point, right?
And when I'm president,
Yeah.
When I was became president, I was 45.
And a business owner, running a business, president. Your kids are older at that point. They're
Yep.
20 something.
Yeah, I'm empty nesting.
You're empty nesting. You're balling big time, right? I mean, you're like, wow. Wish I would have known you then.
No, all I did was work. I
bet-
mean, there
yeah,
was
you can't-
zero life. I
there's zero.
slept at the office. I would do 50. I did 15-hour days for 15 years.
That's what it's
there was
like.
nothing that was more important. There was no. I only wanted to bleed Overstock red blood. I wanted to win the game, and it was at whatever game that I had set that winning goal.
You were
at.
at
So,
that. You were at that game, hardcore.
yeah,
Right.
I wanted to rebuild the technology. I knew that I would be leaving soon. Like I could feel it coming
Really?
in. Yeah, I could feel it happening.
You became the president. You think you're going to leave?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Well, what was next?
Well, why couldn't you be the president for a while?
I guess I could have. I mean, I had looked at the history of the other presidents at Overstock, and they each lasted about 3 years. Now, there's one, whatever that is.
Oh, so you thought you were toast.
Well, I just thought, I mean, what else are you going to do? Like, what's my next achievement?
So what led to you leaving?
I think that a lot of it was 15 years. In 2011, I lost my mom, and I just wanted to take 2 weeks off. And after the first week, they were like, really? Do you really need 2 weeks? Like, is that 2 weeks? And I just thought, what a horrible thing to say to me when I've done so much. Mm-hmm. That was just my moment where I just thought, gosh, that's really bad to make me feel guilty about taking time off work when I had given up so much willingly without regret for so long. That was 2011, and it just kind of put it in perspective for a second. Like, I just lost my mother, and it was like, wow, I need to be tapped more. And I realized that there were these really precious years that my mom was on a checklist versus a priority. And in 2013, when my granddaughter was born,
Wow.
I had an opportunity to be, to make someone a priority. And I started doing that. And with that shift came the shift of like, oh my gosh, I've missed all of it. I missed it all. I gained a lot, I have no regrets, but it just kind of led to me rediscovering myself. And and thinking it's time to move on. And then cannabis hits. So curiosity.
Back at that time, were you an illegal pot smoker or were you a legal pot smoker?
I am an amazing American citizen that lives by laws and pays my taxes. And if I'm smoking pot, no one should ever think I'm doing anything illegally.
Oh, we
I
agree.
don't
We agree.
ever feel like
But it was like not legal in Utah, right?
It's still not really legal in Utah. I mean, they have some really messed up laws, but you know, they've got medicinal use for selective
That's good.
things. But no, I don't ever. I hate the word illegal. I'm not a criminal. I'm the least.
I would. Hey,
but yes,
no,
I am.
You're talking to the wrong guy. I think you should all be legal.
I'm a cannabis supporter and have been.
I ran
since
a
I was
campaign
teenager.
in California to get it legalized. I ran a calling center to do it. I helped try to get it legalized.
Are you a current cannabis user?
I use it to go to sleep occasionally.
Me too. I like it. So e-commerce had happened. Yes, there was an opportunity to be a chairman, talk about CEO. All those conversations happened. It was time for me to do something else. You know, my parents were both blue-collar workers, and they worked at the same jobs always. We never got to go on vacation. We never, you know, it was very wonderful life. I was so loved. But I always worried, like, what if I do the same thing forever? What if it's the same thing forever? So it was 15 years, and I just thought, it's time to step forward, like to step out and see what happens
But you knew
next.
when it was happening. Like what was the time frame? Like what was you don't have to get specific, but
Yeah.
like in general, what was you and Patrick are talking about it, and you guys pick a day you're going to leave, or what?
Kind of and kind of not. I mean, it happened over years, I would say, over a couple years. And then it did get to where I'm going to take a leave of absence. I'm going to go see and make sure that none of us are crazy, and we weren't. And I took the leave of absence and just felt
Didn't come
good.
back.
Yeah.
Wow.
Felt good about it. And it was time. You know, there's no, you know, it's not a bad ending to a story. There's always, it's just another beginning. Like, and I think that people, it was it's the scariest thing I've ever done. I'll be honest. You know, I was so attached to raising the kids, having to do this, so afraid of failure, so scared to not be able to make it, that to be able to step back, try to find out who I am as a grown-up, because I had kids at 17. Here I am, an empty nester. I now don't have responsibility. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I ran around for about 4 years bouncing off walls. Like, I don't know what I was doing. I still had to be moving fast on a train, but I wasn't on the train.
Right.
I didn't want to commit to anybody and be like, oh, yes, I'd love to come run your company, because I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do.
What'd you do for 4 years?
I ran around cannabis and learned. I kept my eyes wide open to every single thing that was happening, all the entrepreneurs, and I didn't compete. I just watched. One of the craziest 4-year movies I've ever seen. And so grateful that I had a front row seat.
So when did you get involved with Adam?
Adam. So I was a friend of High Times with the original owners, or those that were left, Michael Kennedy. Back in 2000, I met him in my Overstock days and was a cannabis enthusiast then. Approached them to take their product online and to start like advancing digitally. But they come from an age where they were all hiding, like where they were taking pictures and stuff, and they hadn't come through that because it wasn't legal, even though, you know, states were doing it. So I knew High Times. When I jumped into the cannabis industry, the folks that were there were kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe we just did this. And
President of Overstock comes to the cannabis industry.
jumps in at a grow in Denver, was super curious about the entire supply chain, how it was going to move, all the different state laws. I mean, what an interesting
Caviar gold.
once in a lifetime experience to learn
Right.
this. When the states get ahead of feds is an incredible time of history, no matter what
No
it is.
question.
Yes. So I had to be there. And that was really a tipping point for me.
People
and
looking
like,
over their shoulder the whole time in that business.
oh my gosh.
Scary.
And then not. And then you think about all the entrepreneurs that kept this baby alive. $56 billion.
No banking.
No banking. This is illegal. Or no, I call it traditional.
There's your
The
word.
traditional cannabis industry.
Choke point, right?
Yeah.
Operation Choke Point.
They were amazing
They
to
tried
do
to
what
kill
they
people,
did.
right? I mean, you think about Obama and Operation Choke Point. He basically tried to put people out of business, right?
Yeah.
You don't take the money. Don't business with people that grow cannabis. That sell cannabis. Payday lenders. All the banking system sort of squeezing them to death, right?
Yeah, it's just bullshit.
Right.
So I got the front row seat to all that. It
Sure.
was great. Went to Denver, did some stuff in California. Really found a medicinal. I thought I'll jump in. It's going to be the green rush. I couldn't do any of that with people in prison. I have a huge thing now with social reform and the justice aspect of how we run this company and prisons for profits. It's really
Terrible.
it's beyond terrible.
It's real. I've seen people.
Of course.
I've seen people. The judges had an interest in the where the juvenile hall the kids went to that was outsourced to a private
Yes.
company, and they got paid $9,000 to put him in there. So he was sentencing all these people. The feds eventually caught up with it, but he was sentencing all these kids to juvenile hall, and of course doesn't disclose that he owns part of the juvenile hall that's a private company providing
horrible
terrible
system.
terrible system.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's all under scrutiny right now, right? This is all going to work
Should be.
itself out.
Should be. We shouldn't be locking people up for marijuana. This is ridiculous.
We shouldn't be locking people up for a lot of things that we lock them up for,
to some
or
degree,
shoot them.
To some degree, you had to be a little bit disappointed with Obama because you would have thought he would have made it easier for everybody. But a lot of people were still locked up under him.
Nobody wants to do the tough job. Like, there's a reason, right? So you've already sold out somewhere in the political world, which I find so confusing, fascinating. But there's somewhere along the way that by kicking the prison, profitable prison system, that's going to affect this congressman's family, that senator. Somehow the matrix is
all caught
so
together, yeah.
entangled that nobody knows which sweater string to pull.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So how long were you at High Times?
Very short time. So I joined the board. Adam bought it in March of 2017. I got to know him over the course of the year, was introduced to him by, shareholders that had known me, from the old days. And I joined the board in December of 2017 and really looked forward to becoming CEO someday and aligned it that way for myself, at least as far as the opportunities that I was willing to take and how I never really wanted to compete with anybody and just kind of feel it through.
Huge
and
opportunity
I became
there. Huge opportunity there.
Huge. I had
Yeah,
great ideas for
incredible
High
brand,
Times.
right.
Yes. And I went on in January of 2020 and I left on May the 4th of 2020. And keep in mind, we were all working from home. So it's not like I had a lot of office interaction. When I went to High Times and kept my sight
That's
on
quick.
the scope, I could
Yeah.
write probably a 360-day book on the 120-day CEO. And then lessons I learned about how I had that in my sight and I wanted it so bad and I got it, and getting it, I had forgotten all these other lessons I had learned in life and what I want to do or the people I want to work with or be with and like-minded people. And I'd kind of forgotten all that just to have that. Like, I want to be the number one in cannabis and do that. And that's the way to follow up Overstock. It wasn't for me. What I saw High Times as and still do is a megaphone where, they're pre-hashtags. They carried a message single-handedly for about 45 years.
A long time.
And then the rest of the world woke up. And it turned out they were right.
Right.
You go back 30 years and it's all medicinal. It's all the things we're learning today being done in grandma's basement. So that's why I wanted it to continue. We're living in an environment where
What's going
people
on with
are
the
getting
brand now?
together.
What's going on with
Nothing.
But what are they doing with High
They're
Times?
opening retail stores. And as a person that spent my life putting retail stores out of business on accident, it's a tough one to open, in my mind, for right now.
What are you doing now?
Like
You got
in
a
general?
scorpion farm?
Oh,
What are you
shit.
doing for a living now?
For a living, I don't know.
You do anything for your daily bread, or you just made so much at Overstock you don't need to work?
Not
What's the
true.
situation?
I do things that I like with people I
A
like
nosy
and makes
guy.
me
You
happy.
hear that nosiness?
That's fair.
Pretty nosy. Well, I'm just curious what you're
I
doing.
showed up.
You're 52. You're a baby. What are you doing?
I have a podcast,
You have a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Lunch with Stormy.
Lunch with Stormy, which we put together before COVID. So I was actually supposed to be on location having lunch with people. We had sponsors and all the good stuff,
Nice.
and fell apart. So we did it from my home, from my trailer, and never went to lunch.
No?
Never went to lunch once.
Never
no, it
had
was
lunch
all
with
through
Stormy?
COVID.
And you live in Utah now?
I live in Utah. I have a place in Mesquite where the Scorpion Depot is. My son runs the Scorpion
Mesquite,
Depot.
Nevada?
Yeah.
That's right out there.
Scenic, Arizona. You'll know where that is, right?
Scenic?
Do you know where it's? You know how Mesquite, like Nevada, borders here, and then there's that little Arizona strip.
Oh, I don't pay attention to this stuff.
Oh my God, it's a
Geography?
really special place.
I know where New York is, and I know where Los Angeles
This is your own backyard. You
I
gotta
just got here. I moved here in January.
It's an hour from right here.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's where the scorpion farm is?
Yes, I just bought 2 acres there in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
What the hell are you raising scorpions for? And what are you doing with them?
Well, okay, so my son, during COVID, had a random night where they went and caught these scorpions, giant desert harries. And
Are those the black ones?
No, these are like happy little scorpions that live in this area, and realized they were out of stock online. They sold for $30. So we put them up for sale, and the Scorpion Depot was born. We have over 300 scorpions and probably 50 snakes now, and they're all really unique. He just got his import and export wildlife license.
You have a place called scorpiondepot.com.
That's correct. And we have 50 different snakes that we're breeding. We have some lizards, and we are just opening a little location. And we're not sure what's going to happen there, but I have commercial
Wow.
property, so we're going to see what happens at the Scorpion Depot.
So people can probably go for a tour, right?
Yeah, well, we're selling scorpions. This is happening.
Kind of like prehistoric pets.
Actually, the scorpions are like dinosaurs.
Well, no, there's a
Dinosaur
place
insect.
called Prehistoric Pets. It's a
there
very
is?
famous place. You go there and they have incredible lizards and scorpions and stuff like that. But they're a retail location, like in Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley,
I love
California.
that.
And they have birthday parties and stuff like that. And they do great. I had my son's birthday party there at Prehistoric Pets. They bring out a big snake. You can hold it. You can put a scorpion in your hand, tarantula, you know.
I'm not sure that we'll do parties, but yeah.
Ever seen scorpion intercourse?
Yes. There's videos of it. You can see it on scorpiondepot.com.
Really?
Yeah. On Facebook.
Scorpion style
Instagram.
instead of doggy?
They do it really.
What's the difference, right? I mean, I don't know.
It's interesting.
I
So
got to
they
tell you,
drop-
this is going downhill quickly here.
Is it though?
Scorpion Depot.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Badass, right?
But that's not what you're doing for a living right now.
No, but I support any businesses my son do.
So you don't have specifically something you're doing. Are you on the search?
I'm doing a few things. I'm on a few advisory boards. I've talking with some women. We're considering founding something that we've had an idea for a little bit and done some work on. Then going to LA this week to go look at. I'm just making some commitments. So I've spent 4 years figuring out life, 1 year on COVID. Finding my own interests and passions and starting to come from a place where I begin and not where I have to feed people or I have to do something. And it's really been a shift. So those are the things I'm doing. It's ADD stuff. They're all things that I love. Scorpion Depot, I'm on the board of 101 Studios, which is the former Weinstein guys have started their own studios. We have Yellowstone and
Really?
some great movies coming out. They've done an amazing job of continuing their careers.
Did I read you performed the first, I guess it says gay wedding, but you
Yes.
mean in Utah?
In my county, in the county that I grew up in.
Really?
And ran for office in. Yeah. The first gay marriage on record.
Right. When?
In the 11 days that it was legal, I think it was 2012. We had 11 days in Utah that gay marriage was legal before the church really freaked out, pushed it to the Supreme Court, and they stopped it for a minute.
Right.
And then that fight happened, and
Right.
normalcy went across America all at once.
You're kind of a renegade.
Yeah,
So you ran for office.
it did.
How'd that go?
Shitty. I lost.
But why was it just because you lost?
No,
doesn't make it
listen.
shitty.
Running for office is one of the greatest things I've ever done. Really. And
When did you run?
Last year.
You ran last year.
Yeah, I ran during COVID.
Right. And you really?
Changed
And
affiliations.
you ran for House?
Yep, House of Representatives of Utah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of Utah. So you mean state house?
Local. I want to bring attention to local governments.
You ran for state house?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
How hard was that?
It was super hard, super sad to get in more insight into our system and how people think and, what the, constituents have for concerns. And, in Utah, it's just really sad to see this entire system that you can, we moved
Are
it
you
a
Mormon?
couple percent. Do I look Mormon?
No.
No, I'm not. In fact, I never chose a religion.
Okay.
Or an organized religion.
Right.
So that's even more confusing for
Right.
some of the population there.
Right.
But I switched to Democrat to do it, and I did it. I did it. I had the conversations. The scariest
You
thing
gonna do
that
it again?
No.
No.
I would be beating my head up against a wall every day if I had to go up in Utah and try to make laws with that particular group of people. We see the world very differently, and
Right.
it's a super majority. And it's okay. I still choose to live there and pay my taxes. But on day-to-day living, I could not be in there at all. I don't know if I would have run if I really would have thought I would win, but I thought it'd be interesting for a cannabis supporter that's open.
If you were going to go back to someone like Overstock, but it was a company you were running, what industry would it be in?
Over my career, I've just been so lucky to have all of these different experiences that I think I could apply to most industries. Like I've got my hands dirty in just enough of everything that it could kind of be dangerous. So I don't know. I think it's really about less the industry and more of the people and the passion and the team that wants to run fast, the team that wants to do, not the team that wants to cover up. Like failures are okay, but let's just fail and keep going. I don't like the secrets. I don't like people who try to keep their jobs to themselves for job protection. I like teams that really flourish together. Enough trust and competition to argue, but enough trust to just go forward. And there was a sadness in running for office. When you start really, could you go in? And I think every politician might go in and be like, I'm going to make a difference. And then somewhere you are unable to. You're unable to move the system. Meeting with people, the two things, there are 20,000 voters in the district I was in. We can talk about anything. It was COVID. Schools are shut. People are losing their job. The homeless community is growing in the town that I live in. There's a lot going on in the world. And their two number one issues were they are coming for my guns. They are. I never found out who they was, but apparently if you run as a Democrat, you are one of them. Even though I came out openly in support of the Second Amendment on every campaign. And the second one was whether or not I can have an abortion. And those were the two things that are on Americans' minds today. And I find that it seems to be a big part of conversation across America, but yes, including that place. And for me, I just think it's time we get over both of those. It is what it is. But there are other things.
So were you pro or choice or not pro-choice?
Well, with my body?
Right.
Yes, I'm pro-choice with my body.
Right. This is what I think is absurd. Okay. So there's no chance on God's green earth that most Americans are going to give up guns.
That's right.
Right. And I don't see how we could possibly still be talking about abortion.
It's been 50 years.
The historical amount of behavior going back to the Bible, of which things are written specifically to control women, is so absurd by now. In modern day,
old.
we're still getting old. That I cannot imagine someone telling me that my daughter, who gets pregnant accidentally, has to have a baby.
Right, and then the guy can just go do what he wants. But your
guy,
daughter
right,
has to have the baby, but it doesn't matter what the guy does because
right,
he's super busy.
I mean, the only thing that I would say to you that is a challenge for me is, unfortunately, I know some women, younger women, that have had them, so many of them, that it seems like a form of birth control.
Absolutely.
Or stupidity.
Yeah,
right?
I've known a couple women that, and one in specifically, that did use it as a form of birth control, which is insanity. But,
wow,
there is a title. There was an entitlement.
It was an accident, but 3 times, right?
It's not an accident after 3 times. That's a form of birth control.
Can't you just like have it put in or something?
But yeah, you can get on the pill. You can
Right.
use a condom. On the 3rd time, it's no longer an accident. It's not empowering yourself at the moment that you should as a woman.
Right.
But
I think that I the strange thing is I consider myself a libertarian. I never studied what libertarians actually are supposed to think, other than the government shouldn't tell women what they can do. Now, I guess it gets confusing after a certain time where the thing is alive, you know. But I have enough of a medical background to know it is not alive for a long time.
well,
It can't function on its own, right?
yeah, and really, we should just
I
let
don't know
women.
why this is so controversial.
It's it's been 50 years, and let women go in a room and discuss what we'll do with our bodies, and that's.
My
that's
mom points out that when I
probably-
was born, it was illegal to have an abortion.
Yes.
1969, right? So I guess good for me,
Whew.
right? Missed it.
Both of us we made it. That's terrible. People
exactly.
aren't going to find that funny. We're
Why?
going to be like, because they get so upset about it.
Well,
you can't
this
even
is
make
a one aspect of it that they won't like what I'm about to say now either, too, and that is, I was fearful that COVID would kill me.
Yeah.
In fact, I got the Moderna vaccine. Now I have a little lump on my right here.
Moderna, the one and done?
No, 2 and done.
2 and done.
I got a little lump right here. You can feel it right there.
Why did you get it right there?
No. I developed a lump after my 2nd vaccine.
Of what?
I don't know what it is.
Did you go to the doctor?
Well, I read into it, and apparently it's a side effect, some swelling of the lymph nodes or whatever.
Oh,
Can be a side
when did
effect.
you get it?
Like a week and a half ago.
Second?
Second, yeah. Some people aren't going to like this part of it, but think about the trillions of dollars we have spent to save what I think is a natural evolution of. This is tough for people to hear, but think about it. We're approaching 8 billion people. There's a point of maximum capacity.
They hate what you just said.
Of course they do.
They hate it.
And even despite the fact, if you look at prior pandemics, where half the population was lost, people survived and moved on. Now, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have come up with a vaccine. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't try to help people. But there's a problem here. This is a societal issue, which is you've spent so much money, and if you look at the economics, at the end of the day, the 8 billion people will just keep marching along, and we will continue to grow our population despite the fact of COVID. Now, I don't want to die from COVID, and I don't want you to die from COVID. But
But you don't care if other people do?
No, I care that anyone dies from it. But at what cost do we allow ourselves to grow to 9 billion?
Well, that's China stuff, right? Where you start saying it's a mandatory abortion.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the consequences of our own behavior, right?
Yes.
We're worried about things like pollution and using oil products and all this other stuff, but population growth is out of control.
It's all out of control.
Sure.
If you don't think there's a revolution coming, and just hopefully we see it in our lifetime.
You mean what kind of revolution?
I know all societies have them, right? They run
Sure.
for. I mean, it would be really
I'm a
early.
study of the finance system, right? You started out in Rome, and England became dominant, and New York became dominant, and Asia's becoming dominant, right? Kind of only a matter of time.
But even like the rise and fall of civilizations.
Sure.
Each age has a couple thousand years within it, and the Piscean age, which was all masculine and hierarchical.
But the most prosperous civilization, the most prosperous part of the world has been the U.S., though. You can't deny it.
We only got 250 years out of millions of history.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We don't know what happens when a society really tries to live accepting of everyone. We're learning what happens. It's really hard to do. It's really
Sure.
hard to bring in all of our religions, all of our backgrounds, all of our colors into one place and say it's equal and everybody has a fair shot. It's proving almost to be impossible. But I think as a country, we are amazing. Like walking around saying "Make America Great Again" is like we're pretty darn good. We're 250 years old. We've accomplished what many countries can't in
Sure.
a very short period of time.
Right.
So we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. We did have a constitution that was strictly written for white men. I wasn't in it. Black guys weren't in it. That's how it was written. We built off that. We've got our growing pains, but as Americans, we should still be pretty proud of what we're doing or trying to do because it's never been done before.
Renegade. Right?
Yeah.
Appreciate the
I'll
time.
take it. I appreciate it.
Stormy Simon.
Todd Ault.
No, I'm going to explain to you real quick. We rolling yet? There's a reason for it.